Welcome back to another Leyland 154 video. Today I'm going to put the engine together, or at least attempt to put the engine together. I've just been checking some bits out. We got a set of new pistons, we got new bearings, gaskets, cam followers. I've still got to clean some bits up. The connecting rods need cleaning up, and the old pistons changing over. I've got to weigh all of them. We'll weigh the con rods and pistons to make sure they're all matched up. What else have we got to do? We've got to gap the piston rings. I've tried a couple of the piston rings and the gaps look a little tight to me, so we've got to gap all the rings before we can put them in, which I hate doing. That's a laborious job, but it's got to be done. But first off, we're going to get the crankshaft in. I've blown all the oil galleries out of the block. If you get any machining work done on your block, make sure there's no filings in it anywhere. This is all being cleaned out. I'm happy that this is good to go. Yeah, I think that's about it. So we'll start off, we'll get the crankshaft in and go from there. But yeah, so we want to turn this over. Right, that is the bottom of the engine. How are you guys? Can you? Let's make sure you folks can see. Okay, the bottom of the engine is lovely and clean. I'm not going to do any more cleaning on the block. She is good to go. Right. Main bearings. These are our main bearings, standard size. Little tang goes in the little groove and on the caps as well. I'm putting these in the block dry, but remember to put a bit of lube on them before you put them in, before you drop the crank in. There's one. I've mentioned before, this has been cylinders honed out to 20 thou over. So our pistons, I don't know whether you can see, are O to O's 20 thou over. It just means they're 20 thousandths bigger than a standard piston. If you get your crankshaft ground, you'll need an undersized bearing, i.e. you'll need a bearing that the hole is not as big as it should be, because your crank would have got smaller, if that makes sense. Make sure the holes in the bearings catch the oil gallery, like that one there. They're all very good. This one will sit slightly to the side, but you can see the groove. These, no, they don't have the groove, but these do. Let me see if I can pop that bearing back out. This groove, I don't know how well you can see. Let me bring you in. This groove here is where the oil's fed up through the holes and then other places. This bearing's got grooves in it, and when you put the bearings in, which just pop in like so, the little tang locates it. The little tang also stops them spinning, if you've ever heard of spun bearings. But all of the holes in the bearings line up with the grooves. I always use, well, mostly always use, because there's many brands available, but I use Lucas Assembly Lube. Be generous. And then just Smear that. It's very sticky oil, and all it does is it protects the bearings on initial startup from stops them being dry when you're assembling it. I'll always leave the glow plugs out until I've got oil pressure when I first crank this up, because it takes a minute for all the oil to get everywhere it should be. Right, now we can drop the crank in. Turn the crank around. Here is our crankshaft. Oh, hang on, I forgot a piece. These are our thrust bearings, thrust washers. And if I'd forgotten to put them in, it would have been a disaster. These are our thrust washers. These live here, like so. And these are what keeps the crank from moving front to back. If you've got too much what they call end float, front and back movement on your crank, it's normally because your thrust, are they thrust bearings or thrust washers? I'm going to call them thrust washers. I'm going to put a bit of assembly lube on them because it's sticky stuff and it keeps them in place. And I'll just smear a bit on there. Now, what stops them spinning is the one that goes in the cap's got a tang on it that lives in there, stops them spinning round and round. But that is our thrust bearings in. Thrust washers, bearings, I don't know. Whatever you want to call them. Now we're going to carefully lower our crank in. Just like so. I'm going to put a bit more assembly lube on the main bearings. 3 main bearings in this engine. 3 main bearings for, these are your big end bearings or your comrod bearings. This is our centre cap. It's labelled front. That goes to the front of the engine. Let's get some lubrication. I've been looking everywhere for my feeler gauges, but I can't find them. But Amazon are bringing me a new set today. We're going to want them to gap the rings, which we'll cover later. Like I said, that's a laborious job. I hate gapping piston rings. Right, front towards the front. And that is that cap in. It has 2 big spring washers and 2 bolts. These end caps, these are a tight fit in here. Hang on, that's the front. I'm sure that's the front. And I'm sure that's the back. Right, this is our back cap. I'll get another bearing. It's just occurred to me, did you notice the deliberate mistake with that? I bet you didn't. We didn't put a bearing in it. Remember to put a bearing in your bearing cap or you're about to destroy stuff. The irony being, if you'd put the bearings in the M1s, you probably wouldn't have noticed. But we did notice. Right. 2 washers. 2 bolts. Okay, let's get an end cap in. Like I said, these are a tight fit, these are. That's our bearing in our cap. Bit more assembly lube, which is horrible sticky stuff. These really are a nightmare to get to go in there. You often wonder if they're right, but they are. There we go, and we're going to want you get your lump hammer, and don't use that end. These can be a bugger to get out as well. You have to put screw a slide hammer into them and hammer them out. And again, we want 2 big spring washers and our bolts. I've built one of these engines before. I brought all the parts. I didn't check nothing as thoroughly as I should have. It had a reground crank in it. It had 10 thou undersized main bearings and 20 thou undersized big end bearings. I put it all together with standard bearings. This was in an MG midget. And oh, what a disaster. All because of a slight oversight in not checking. These were all standard in this engine. And I haven't had the crank reground. The crank is good. But yeah, that was a bad day. I won't be doing that again. They're just such a bugger to line up. I find tilting them in a bit. And a big washer, a big bolt. I dropped one of the washers. Oh, I've got a really bad ankle. I'm walking around like a cripple. But I don't say anything. Right, let's find a socket. Come over here and find a socket. Oh, actually, I don't think this socket set goes big enough. Oh yeah, it does. It does go big enough. Right, before we torque those down, you want to check your crank spins nice. Now it will be a little bit stiff because that is some sticky assembly lube, but that feels absolutely fine. That feels lovely. Right, I'm not sure what the torque specs are, if I'm going to be honest. I've got to look them up in the book. We are 75 pound-feet. 75 pound-feet. Now, what is that? My torque wrench only does newton meters, I think. Does this one do pounds, Mint? Right, this one does inch pounds. I always get myself confused there. Main bearing nuts, diesel model. 75 pounds-feet. I'm going to check what that is in newton meters and come straight back to you. Okay, according to Google, it's 100 newton meters. I'm not going to get away with it on that ratchet. Hang on, let me find the big ratchet, big torque wrench. Okay, I've got the big torque wrench. And we want to set it to 100 newton meters. There we go. I will re-torque these once I've got all the pistons and rods in. But they are, for the moment, torqued in. Our crank spin's lovely and smooth. There's no binding, so it looks like our bearings were good. Just because they're new, I have had occasions where a new bearing's just been a bit excessively tight for some reason. I got a feeling I had to send those bearings back and try another set, which were fine. But on this occasion, we are good to go. That is fine. Right, I'm going to put the camshaft in next. I haven't replaced the camshaft bearings because there's nothing wrong with them. They look good. Let me find a camshaft. Here is our camshaft. I'm going to put a bit of lube on the bearings, on that. I'm also going to put a bit of lube in the bearings in the block, because there is no oil left in this block. It's been steam cleaned and degreased and God knows what else. Okay. And our camshaft, you just got to slide in carefully without scraping the lobes all over the bearings. That is our camshaft in. Now we've got a couple more bits can go in here. We got these two gears which I haven't cleaned. Let me just give them a clean. This is the oil pump drive, which I'm sure goes in first. We'll find out in a minute. But I'm pretty sure this interferes with the fuel pump drive. So we're going to put this in first. I'm going to drop some oil down in there. And that literally drops in there. And that is our oil pump drive in. I guess we can put our... I'm not going to put the diesel pump drive in yet because that needs to be timed up. We'll cover that when we get to it. But our camshaft is in, our crankshaft is in. I think we'll put the oil pump on. Okay, these are our oil pump studs, which we got to put in. Like so. I think I'm going to do the old double spanner trick on them because I haven't got a stud insertion tool small enough. Let's get me little tub of nuts and bolts. All you got to do is put one nut on. Put your second nut on, and we're going to jam those two nuts together to wind the studs in. Now I have given the workshop a major tidy up, which means I can't find nothing. The two nuts, they're jammed together, we can wind the stud in. These were a bugger to get out. There's one. Now, anyone watching this, you probably already know how to do this. So if you don't want me droning on, turn the volume down. But you never know, you might learn something. I always do. I mean, it's not the most exciting thing, but I don't really know what I can do to make it more... I mean, the engine might fall off the engine stand in a minute. That'll add a bit of excitement. I hope it doesn't. I was hoping this would be a quick set of new piston rings and a quick freshen up and I'd be gone, but now we're quite a lot further in than that now. One more of these. I've got to clean the oil pump up. That's as removed. I'll stick that in the parts washer. We've got a gasket over there somewhere for it. I never know whether to bother putting sealant on the oil pump gasket or not, but I normally always put a little bit of sealant on. I might not. I'll have a think. Right, they are our 3 oil pump studs. Let me find the gasket for it. This is our oil pump gasket. It's important with all of the parts you've bought to throw them on the floor at least once. When you drop them on the floor, they pick up a bit of grit off the floor, and the grit really helps bed everything in. I am of course joking, but I do throw everything across the floor. It's old age. Okay, this is our oil pump gasket. Do we put a bit of sealant on it? I think we might just put a little tiny bit on. Just a smear. By a smear, I literally mean a smear. There is our oil pump. Right, let me find the oil pump. Right, here is our oil pump. I'm going to give this a bloody good going over in the parts washer, and then I'll bring you back in 2 minutes. Okay, I've cleaned the oil pump up. As clean as it needs to be. That literally drops on like so. These have washers, spring washers and nuts, which I should have in this little tub here. Just that's our 3 flat washers. We got 3 spring washers. And then we want 3 nuts. Three nuts. This has got a little drive peg. You might have to turn the camshaft until that lines up with the little peg on the drive gear. Well, you will, unless you're really good and you've lined it up. I'm just going to tighten these up. I'll check the torque settings for these in a minute. I will double check all my nuts in here before I tighten the sump up. Okay, You're probably thinking, doesn't the oil pump get in the way of the com rods? And it's like, no, not really. By putting the oil pump in, it means that gear's not going to fall out on me. Clean our main bearing journals up. Okay, so we got our camshaft in. We got our oil pump drive and oil pump in. And obviously our crankshaft is in. So what we're going to do next. Right, I'm a bit stuck on pistons until my feeler gauges arrive. We can put the end plate on, I suppose. Let's have a look. Right, this is our front plate. I'm going to get all this cleaned up and we'll stick that on the front of the engine. Then we can put the timing chain on. If you give me a few minutes to get all that cleaned up, I'll spin you around so you can see the front of the engine here, and we'll put that on. Then we can time the crank to the cam. Then we can install our diesel pump drive gear. There's not a lot goes on in here really. You've got your main bearings, your big ends, the oil pump. Then the sump can go on. That's about all that needs doing in here. I am very pleased. Okay, I've cleaned the front cover up. We've got to put a gasket on it. Let me just check that you can see what I'm up to. Okay, that should work. Right, this is the gasket. Slips on there like so. Let's get some sealant on it. We'll try and get some sealant on it. Right, which way is this going on the engine? This is going on the engine that way. Doesn't need much sealant, because the gasket is supposed to be doing the sealing for us, but I always like to use a little bit of sealant. Let me chop a bit more off the end of that tip. That should have done it. No, we got a little dried up bit of sealant in the nozzle. Doesn't that drive you mad? That should have got it. Okay, that's sealant on that side of the gasket. Probably doesn't need the sealant, but I don't want any oil leaks. And I'm really not using much, just a little bit. Okay. Oi. Hang on a minute, that way. God, why is this fighting me? There we go. Find a spanner. Right, I need some little washers. I can find some little washers. There they are. Okay, this is our camshaft retaining plate. This basically stops the camshaft sliding in and out. It gets locked between this plate. Hang on, got my little washers. This should have little serrated washers, but I haven't got them. But these will work just fine. Now, most of the retaining bolts for this cover are actually the front cover bolts, which I've just thrown in the parts washer. Let's get 7/16. That's those two. What do we want next? I'll just tighten them up. With the right size socket. That's those. We got our timing chain tension up, which I've locked in the in position. You twist the guts in until it locks itself in, and then when I push that in a minute, it'll release and flick itself out. But obviously we want to put some timing chains on it first. I'm just checking. We want one more nut. One more nut, which I'm going to use that one. These are all pretty standard nuts, so if I need new ones, I've got a whole case of UNF nuts down there. I'm not worrying about torquing these, I'm just doing them up good and tight. There. That is on there. You know, I can't remember what order those washers go in. Let me just have a quick gander in the manual to remind me. See, I do read the instructions sometimes. I don't rebuild these that frequently that I remember everything. There we go. No. The answer to that is no, it doesn't have anything. So let me just wash this cam gear off. Crank gear, I should say. Get that on there. And then we got our cam gear. I've got a new chain. So that chain can go in the bin. Give this a rinse off. It's raining here now. I don't know whether you can hear that. That noise is rain on my roof. I thought we were going to get away with no rain today, but apparently we are not. Here's our new chain. Not the most exciting video, this one. Right, these gears have got little marks on them, and we've got to line the marks up. We got a little dot on the crank. You probably can't see that. And we got a dot on the cam wheel. And I've got to turn the camshaft, which isn't easy. That should do us, I think. There we go. Now what we're going to do is now that is pushing our cam into the engine there, which we don't want. This is always a bit fiddly. It's this gear that stops the cam going into the engine because it runs on this plate. So until this gear is on, let's make sure that gear is sliding on the cam before we put the chain on. Okay, I'm going to make sure our gears are lined up, which they are. Now this is exciting, YouTube, isn't it? There we go, we're going now. Okay. Our dots are lined up with each other. That's a good fit, that chain. Okay, and then the camshaft has, I think it has a lock washer. Let me just double check again before I make myself look like a fool. Bear with me just a second. Just a second. Yes, it has a lock washer. I might have got a new one here somewhere. Where is my new one? And I can't remember what that other washer I bought was for. This is our lock washer. It's got a little tang that goes in the hole where the woodruff key sits. And that is our lock washer. And then it has the nut. Just going to check actually, make sure I'm sure I've got a socket here for that. Let me have a look. Somewhere it could even be that one. No, it's not that one. It's that one. Okay, let's put our bolt on. Okay, I'll have to torque this nut up and knock the lock washer over. But what we need to do is line your bolts up, no, not your bolts, line your dots up. And what you do, you get a straight edge and it should sit in line with the two shafts and across the two. So there's a straight line through the crank, through the cam and straight over both those little pimples. And that is the crank and the cam shaft timed up. So they are both in. Obviously we've still got more to do here. We've got to put our tensioner on. Now I'm sure this has a little gasket, it does. I'm not going to use any sealant on this gasket. Just going to put the gasket in dry. And tighten the tensioner up. And just knit them up. Now when I push that in, that'll take up the tension. So that is our timing chain on. We still got to torque up the cam retaining nut, and this you just hammer it over onto the flat. The tensioner's also got little lock tabs on, but that is our timing chain on and front cover, tensioner. So our crank is now tied to our camshaft. At this point we can put the hang on. Bear with me. We can put our diesel pump drive gear in, which I think I've got here. This is our diesel pump drive gear. Now, I don't know whether you'll see. This has got a splines in here, but there's one spline missing. I'm going to quickly read the manual, but I'm pretty sure that spline goes at 5 o'clock with the timing marks lined up. The timing marks lined up would be top dead centre on piston number 1. Let me just find the diesel pump drive gear. Fuel system, diesel models. I'm sure it's 5 o'clock. We're about to find out. Do you know, I think that bit is in the engines actually. Hang on, bear with me. Correct position for the fuel injector, pump drive and spindle master spline when number 1 piston is at 24 degrees before top dead centre. So yeah, it is. It's 5 o'clock. What I mean by 5 o'clock is this is the top of the engine. That's 12 o'clock. So we want that. I'll put a little mark on. For you people watching at home, 5 o'clock will be about there. Now as you drop this drive gear in, the drive gear will engage and pull it round. So you need to come Oh Christ, got to try and remember. Let's put some lube down there first of all. Plenty of lubrication. Right, luckily I can still get my hand in here. So I'm going to wiggle it in. Okay, so that is at 2 o'clock. $4 o'clock maybe. How far off top dead centre again? Right about there. Right about there. There. That is at 5 o'clock. I won't get you in to look, but like I said, there's an area where there's a spline missing, so there's like a notch. Line that up with your 5 o'clock. Then we have, that goes in there, this little fella, which drops on there like that. I am just going to put the smallest bit of sealant around there. Like so. And then I have got the drive plate here somewhere. Hang on, let me find the drive plate. This is the drive plate. That drops down in there, holds the gear in place and centre. This needs cleaning up. I'm going to stop this here. I'm going to go and clean this up, and then I'll bring you back and we'll get that bit on. I'm obviously delaying the inevitable here. We've got to gap these piston rings in a bit. But like I said, I can't find the feeler gauges, and Amazon are bringing me a new set today. So I'm going to get this cleaned up and bring you back in a minute. We'll fit this. And then I guess we can start weighing con rods. Match the weights on those. And then we can put the pistons on the con rods. And then we're going to have to gap the piston rings before we can fit them. So give me a little while and we'll come back when I've cleaned these bits up. Okay, that's got our diesel pump flange fitted. I'm going to put a bit of sealant round in there. That's all it needs. And that just drops in there. Like so. And it has this one screw to hold it in. Well, it has this one screw retain it. The diesel pump itself is what squeezes it on here. But we'll put that screw in. Let me get a Phillips screwdriver. Phillips screwdriver. This one will work. And that is our diesel pump drive gear installed. Ah, right, what else can we get on with? Not a lot whilst we're waiting for some feeler gauges. So, our cranks in, our cams in. They're all timed together. Tensioner's on, new chain is on. Diesel drive gear's in and timed up. The oil pump and drive gear is in. They don't need timing. I think that's it for the moment until we've got some piston rings. Let me turn this round the other way. We've got to go all the way around. There we go. Right, piston ring gap. I'll just clean that piston ring up because I've got some sealant on it. That won't help our goal. Okay, piston ring. This is a compression ring. The top compression ring, the second and third compression ring, and the oil scrapers all have slightly different tolerances. But what we do is we put this is the piston ring gap. We drop it in the bore. We use the piston to push it in nice and square. And I'll get you in close. And I'll take you out of this. Get you in close. That is supposed to be, I'll have to look in the book, but basically we haven't got a piston ring gap at the moment. So we're going to have to open that up a tiny bit. I'll look in the book and get the measurements and wait for me feeler gauges. But what we're going to have to do, we're going to have to file the end of the piston ring until that gap is the right amount. Once we've gapped all the rings, we can put them back on the piston. We got our top compression ring, second and third, and then we got 2 oil scrapers. These all need to have a specific gap when they're in the bore. And I can tell looking at that gap straight off the bat. Well, if my phone will focus, there really isn't even a gap there. It's not binding, it is going in there okay, but that gap needs adjusting. So once I've got some feeler gauges sorted, I'll get you back in here and we'll gap some rings and we'll get a piston and com rod in. See you shortly. I'm back. Right, Amazon have failed to deliver my feeler gauges and I've looked everywhere for mine and I can't find them, which means I've put them somewhere safe so I won't lose them. So they're gone forever. Whilst doing other things, I've cleaned up the timing chain cover and bolted that on dry because I've still got to torque up the camshaft retaining nut and knock the lock tab over. So I've just put that on so I know where all the nuts and bolts are basically. And I've put the pulley on because it makes it easier to turn the crank when I'm putting the pistons in. One thing I have noticed, when I took the water pump off, it only had 3 of its 4 bolts, which I thought, to be honest, was just me being a bit slapdash one afternoon when I fitted the water pump in a hurry. But this bottom hole has got no threads. Well, it could have threads, but they're certainly not the right size if it has. So I suspect someone stripped them out because it's quite a shallow hole. The water pump has different length bolts. One of the bolts goes through the water pump. What would you call that? The water pump? I think they call it the adapter plate in the book. But one of them goes through this plate and into the block. 2 of them just bolt into this plate. And there's a third one down here that should just bolt into the plate. I suspect someone's put a bolt that's too long in there in the past and stripped that out. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to drill that hole out and put a threaded stud in it, and then I'll re-drill it and tap it to take the nut, the bolt. I'm here, I might as well get that done. Other than that, I think that's going to be about it for today's exciting episode. No, one more thing. I've weighed all my connecting rods. They're all the same weight. which is good news, or all within a couple of grams of each other. The connecting rods are numbered 4, what's this one, 3, 2 and number 1. Make sure you get the right rod in the right hole, because they do vary in the offset from the big end bearing. So make sure you put them in the right hole. Other than that, I think that's about all we can get on with today. I fitted one piston to the number 1 rod, but I can't fit it because I've got to gap all the rings. Other than that, I am going to get on now. I'll do it off camera. I'll just thread that hole and I'll probably screw a bolt into it. I've got a bolt handy. All I'll do is I'll find a bolt, I'll tap that hole out and thread lock a bolt in there. I'll cut it off flush. I'll mark the centre with a centre finder punch and a transfer punch, sorry, is the correct term, and drill and tap that so I can have 4 bolts in my water pump. Other than that, that's going to be it for today. I won't bore you anymore. Putting an engine together is a pretty laborious task, a lot of fiddling and messing around, but you got to do it or it won't run right. And I've spent enough on parts and machine work now that I want it right. I have stripped the cylinder head down, ready to grind all the valves in and whatnot. Other than that, I think that's going to be it for today. Apologies for the slightly boring video, but remember to like and subscribe or you'll miss out on my next boring video. And yeah, hopefully tomorrow we can get some pistons in. Then we can torque all the ends and main bearing caps up and put the sump back on. And then I can take it off this engine stand. We've got to put the back plate on. I've got a new rear main seal here. Other than that, that is it. Oh, one last thing. Lifters. I brought some new lifters. Let me get a warm one and show you. Okay, I don't know whether you can see that. The end of that lifter, that's one of the better ones. They're very pitted. I've bought some new ones. They look like they've probably been in a box on a shelf for 30 years. But I bought some new, well, I would call it a cam follower. These lift down and follow the cam down in there. The cam is fine. I've checked the cam out. The lobes all look great. So we caught that early enough. But yeah, all of our cam followers were buggered. So we got new cam followers. And that's it. Right, I'm going to love you and leave you. Remember to click subscribe. And I'll see you tomorrow when hopefully we'll be gapping piston rings and putting some pistons in. But other than that, thanks for watching.